I'm really excited to hear this next one because if you're a sci-fi buff, and I am, I just finished a book about time-traveling people wearing bowler hats. You want to pay close attention to this one. His name is Ari Popper. He's the CEO and founder of SciFutures. And SciFutures uses science fiction to help clients prototype advanced technology-driven products and concepts. That sounds really cool. So Ari's an expert on possible futures, and he's passionate about building them. Today he's going to talk about the emerging and more distant futures of intelligence, the role of emotion, and the many questions that spring from the advance of new technologies. So let's welcome Ari.
All right, well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. This is an amazing time to be doing the sort of stuff that we're doing. Thinking about AI, thinking about emotion, thinking about where the world's going. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about how we're helping our clients do this, how we see the world, where it's evolving. And then I want to spend more time talking about emotion in advertising, AI and emotion, and potentially our role in this room, what we need to be thinking of and how we should be approaching these really exciting territory that are rich with opportunity and potential, but also ethical minefields, really. So let's get right into it. So just a little bit about the times that we're living. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're all here for the very reason. But I like to say we live in the exponential age. Things are changing super quickly. There's companies and organizations that are able to leverage that, and they're getting massive advantage by doing that. A lot of companies are on what we call the linear path to doom. So they're changing, but they're changing incrementally, and it's just not fast enough. And they're trying, but there's a lot of issues with change, and there's a lot of issues with exponentiality. The big one is, just as human beings, we just struggle with the notion of trying to figure out where the world's going to be in 5 to 10 years. You guys familiar with Dan Ariely? Yeah, behavioral economist. And he says that human beings, we kind of grossly overestimate what's going to happen in the short term, but more importantly, completely underestimate what's going to happen in the long term. And we see this every single day in the work that we do. We'll say, that'll never happen. And then before you know it, it's happening. So how do we kind of get around it? Well, the first thing we need to do as futurists and working with our clients is we have to be willing to be mocked and laughed at and almost made fun of for our visions of where the world's going to be. Because that's the only way that we're going to really have any chance of getting it right. And so essentially what we do at SciFutures is we use the power of storytelling and science fiction as a way to help our clients break down those belief barriers and get a much richer, much more visceral, much more future literate sense of the future. So, Arthur C. Clarke, the famous scientist and science fiction writer, he says that in order to predict the future, you have to be so bold and so outrageous that people will laugh you to scorn. And there's a great video of him talking in 1964 on the BBC about his prediction of the world that we live in today. So I recommend you Google that. We don't have time to show that. So that's what we do. We use storytelling. So the problem, again, with trying to predict the future, and again, thinking about this space specifically, emotions, AI, future of advertising, is when you look at emerging tech early, it's deceptively disappointing. So I was actually reading this morning on my way in that a self-driving shuttle in Las Vegas, they launched it today, and within the first hour, it had an accident. So it didn't go very well. They piloted it, and I guess for 2 weeks, and it worked fine. But the first hour, it crashed, and it wasn't the self-driving car's fault. It was a truck that was backing up, and it was interesting to see the spin and the PR on that it wasn't its fault. It was a truck that backed in. But that's the thing with emerging tech. You look at it early, and you go, it's never going to take off. Things like augmented reality, you look at it early and you go, it's gimmicky, it's clunky, it's never going to take off. And then you get things like Pokemon Go, that happen. It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. So how do we get up this curve? How do we accelerate the vision of where we can be? And through storytelling, and we're all storytellers in this room. Stories are tremendously powerful. I think of them as stories of data with soul. And what our responsibility is as storytellers is to create preferred futures and visions of the futures that break down belief systems, but that are win-win and net positive for everyone. And I'm super passionate about that idea. And it's more important now than it ever has been because these technologies are becoming so powerful and are so disruptive. And we have a genuine responsibility to tell positive, uplifting, visionary stories to transform our society and to transform what we do. And particularly in marketing and particularly in advertising, we really need to think hard about the types of stories we're telling and the visions that we're creating. So there's a great study by Ohio State University where they looked at people who were told a series of events using a story, literally a story condition, and just facts. And they were the same facts, but one was told in a story and one was told factually. And there was a significant difference in beliefs about the world and themselves that people had for people who were told that information in a story. And there's something about stories that transform our brain chemistry, that transform our belief of what's possible. And so what we do at SciFutures is we use that as a transformation device to help our clients create better visions of the future. So that's enough about kind of the vision and philosophy. I want to really get into the emotion stuff. So working with sci-fi writers, we have over 200 published writers that work for us under NDA. Over the years, last 5-6 years, we've seen some very interesting visions of the future. And I just want to share some of them with you quickly, and that'll back into the emotion and AI topic that we're going to talk about. So it's kind of cool. It's almost like a download, almost like a zeitgeist. If we could plug into corporate executives, take their brains and their creativity, and take our sci-fi writers, and kind of pull out what we can learn, we see some very interesting visions of the future. And it's not about the future, it's really about today that we're learning. So I'm just going to give you a few of the trends and then get into emotion and AI. So, first one is a future that's kind of dystopian in my point of view, is we see in our stories that our writers write, also that our execs write, that there's drones everywhere delivering packages. So this isn't, someone didn't send out a memo and say, every time you write a story on the future, make sure that drones delivering packages are involved. But it seems to be part of our consciousness right now, this idea of drones flying everywhere. And the reason why I'm reflecting this to you is because I want us to think about that. Do we want that? Do we want our skies full of drones all the time, buzzing around? Maybe, maybe not. I think Amazon does. But do we as a species want that? I don't want that. I don't want drones flying over my house every minute. But maybe some people do. But again, it's just something that's bubbling up in our stories. Next topic is obviously automation, self-driving cars. Tons going on here. We're doing a lot of work in the space. I think I like this example because it illustrates how quickly something that felt like sci-fi was, holy crap, cars are going to drive themselves? 20 years' time, 30 years' time. A lot of people were saying that, as little as 3-4 years ago. And yet now, today one crashed, but regardless. We know that Google's Waymo is really getting online, that they're much, much safer than human driving. And really this automation of cars is transforming everything, not just transport, as you know, but insurance and convenience stores and city planning. And it's really coming online, and it's going to transform our society, the way cars are designed, what we do in cars, how we get around, car ownership. And it's coming very quickly. So that's a big one. One of my favorites is augmented reality. This is from a great video. You can Google it. Called Hyper Reality, and it's basically a dystopian vision of augmented reality and gamification around shopping. And essentially, this would be something any of us would recognize any day of the week. We'd go into a store, and this is pretty much how it looks. But in the future, potentially, I would say likely, there might be an augmented future where every product in the supermarket is customized to us. The pricing's changed, the packaging's changed, the messaging's changed, the whole experience is gamified. We know this is a vision that executives in Silicon Valley are working on. We've done work for big tech companies that are looking at this. We know there's this secretive but kind of scary, brilliant company called Magic Leap that's working on some profound AR technologies that project images onto the retina. People have gone in there, got a demo, and come away converts. So this future's coming. Again, we see it a lot in our stories. This is VR. So a little Schadenfreude in the morning. But what I love about this little GIF is that it shows the power of VR. So VR is a new medium. We're still figuring out how to use it. But what we know it does is it hacks the brain. If you've had a great VR experience, you will know that it's very hard for you to force yourself to believe that you're not in a real environment. Your brain just takes over. And that's because we've got a lizard brain and our visual system is so advanced that when we're in this environment, we're convinced we're there. So as a technology and as a tool, it's incredibly powerful. We're seeing actually just over the road, There's some phenomenal work done by a guy by the name of Skip Rizzo, who's working with PSD sufferers, showing VR therapy. And he's been doing this a long time, 10 years, and it's working. There's clinical evidence. So VR is a tool for us to hack the brain. That's going to mean tremendously positive and beneficial things for us as a species, but it's also going to mean we're going to lose people in VR worlds. So we need to think about that. So again, these are themes in our stories. Next one. Mind-machine interface. This is one of those Arthur C. Clarke Awards where you think people are going to laugh at me and mock me when I say that in the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to have mind-to-mind communication, mind-to-machine communication. But we are. And when that happens, what the hell does it mean for us as a species? Because now we can communicate, and I can download my thoughts. So imagine I'm standing here in front of you, and we all have some interface that Elon Musk has built with the company that it's working on to do this. And I can go, here's my presentation, folks. All right, I'll see you in a bit. And that's essentially what we're talking about, is this kind of communication platform that Musk envisions and is building. And if you don't believe me, if you've heard of the Wait But Why blog, go to Wait But Why and look up the latest post that they've put on Elon Musk's mind machine. I think they call it the neural lace, the neural mesh work that he's working on. It's very trippy, but it's coming. So, future of advertising. So do you guys know Tom Fishburne, the marketunist? He's phenomenal. He's a terrific guy, and this was his latest cartoon. And is this the future of advertising? That's a question that I'm putting out there. Is the IoT world and the connected world and the voice UI world and the AI world going to be bombarding us all the time with messaging? I'm not sure. I have a theory of how it's going to pan out, but I'll get to that in a sec. But what I really want to talk about is the emotion part. So what happens when machines can read our emotions? What happens when machines know us better than we know ourselves? How does that transform marketing? How does it transform advertising? How does it transform all of us as a species? And these are some of the ideas that we're working with clients with and playing with right now. And it's not far-fetched. This was an article a couple of years ago, actually last year in the New York Times, about Google Home. It says a voice-activated device that already knows you. And there's an analyst from Forrester who was saying that in the very near future, there's going to be a small handful of companies that are basically going to be your agents for shopping, and they're going to know you and they're going to know your preferences, and you're going to rely on them. So a couple of them are in the back there, the fantastic NPR exhibit back there. There's an Alexa there, there's a Google Home there. But what happens as these devices progress along the exponential curve and we start to rely on Alexa now for more things than just getting the weather and NPR, but we start to really bring Alexa into our life, and Alexa becomes our own personal agent. Now we link that up with biometrics and our emotion, and it starts to get to know us better. The algorithms improve. It's a virtuous circle. The more we trust it with our data, the better it becomes. The more we trust it with our data, the better it becomes. And this future is emerging, and we can see it. And there's a real battle going on. We call battle for the hub, but there's a battle for really who's going to own our interface to the portal to the future, to shopping, to events. And lots of businesses are working on this. But the cool thing, or the exciting thing, and the terrifying thing is emotion. Because it's something so deeply personal and intimate about all of us. And so when these devices know us intimately, they know our emotions, and we trust them with it, really, where does it take us as a species, and what are our responsibilities? And that's really what I'm obsessed about. So the effective computing market's going to grow from 9.3 billion 2 years ago to about 53, 54 billion by 2021. I was recently at a conference in Boston on emotional AI. This is where I got that data from. And it was fascinating. It was a whole day just talking about emotion measuring technologies and AI. And there were some pretty scary, amazing things that I learned in that conference. The most profound thing that I learned was that there's been some experimental work done by Rosalind Picard. She's at MIT. She works with Affectiva there. And they're able now to predict how we're going to feel in 24 hours. With greater than 80% confidence. Wow. So using biometrics, big data, and self-report, they can now tell how you'll feel in 24 hours. So that's tremendously powerful when you think of it in terms of an algorithm and using that information. So in terms of advertising industry, MNC Sheep created a billboard that can read your emotions and then change content, so it's already happening. I think that's really interesting. There's a billboard in Piccadilly Circus that's just been turned on that can see pedestrians, know what gender they are, know what, how old they are, and adjust content based on that. It can also do the same with a make and model of cars that are driving by. And people are a little bit up in arms about it, but it's working, it's out there. It's really freaking amazing if you think about it. Apple took out a patent a few years ago using mobile devices to measure emotions and then send you ads based upon that. So that's in the patent records as well. So these are some of the weak signals that are bubbling up. I would say they're not even weak signals, they're strong signals about where we're going. So is the future going to look like this? I don't think so. I think it's going to look a little bit more like this. Oops, did we miss my key slide? We did. Why didn't that one come up? That is very strange. Yeah, it didn't come up. God, that was my punchline. What a bummer. Anyway, the picture that I had here was of, have you guys seen the movie Her? Yeah. So Joaquin Phoenix talking to his cell phone. Very simple picture, just of him and his cell phone, and he's in love with his cell phone, with his OS. And I think the future is going to be more that. It's going to be less the busy, noisy competing, and it's going to be one device, one AI that we trust, that'll be our own personal ecosystem, our own personal cloud. It'll be secure. And this device, or this AI, it obviously will start with a phone, but then it'll go into our ear, and that's why Apple cut off the cords and made them Bluetooth, because they want us talking. They don't want this, they want this. I think the future is going to be that. We're going to have an AI, and it might be Google's AI, it might be Alexa's AI, it might be another company's AI, it might be Cortana. But we're going to trust that AI, and that AI is going to get to know us, and we're going to have ubiquitous supercomputing on demand. And because our emotions are going to be part of that, it's going to be incredibly powerful, and we're going to trust it, and we're going to fall in love with it. Maybe not as much as Joaquin Phoenix did, but maybe we will. And that's the future I think that's emerging. And so this is where I get into my ethics slide. Do we want that future as a species? Maybe, maybe not. Are we really talking about it and asking serious questions about it? I don't think so. We're certainly not taking it seriously enough. What does it mean for our humanity? What does it mean for us as professionals? What does it mean for our children's lives? Those questions are really important. A great way to tackle them is through science fiction and through storytelling. Stories help us rehearse the future. They help us play with ideas. That's what sci-fi is. Sci-fi is taking ideas and speculating, saying, what if? What if we have supercomputers in our mind? Like, you guys, Ender's Game, right? So Jane was the supercomputer that lives in everyone's ear, and you can talk to Jane. And Jane's a gazillion times smarter than everyone and has access to all the information and can control everything. And it's fascinating to see that future sort of emerging now. So science fiction stories help us play with ideas, speculate where they are. Minority Report is the iconic one. A lot of what was predicted in that movie has come true and surpassed. And really what it allows us to do, as Winston and Catherine was saying earlier, is it allows us to humanize technology so that we can really take tech, emerging futures, and we can take people and we can tell stories and mash them up and say, okay, that's really interesting. When Pokemon Go came online, people were running around and getting arrested and trespassing, and people were getting injured and hurt, and people were making friends, and people were getting exercise. And those kinds of futures we could have anticipated just by telling a story. What if we create a game that uses AR that's super addictive, where people have to run around in the real world and chase Pikachus? And you can write that story, and you'll figure out all those things that happen. You won't get everything, but you'll play with ideas. And that's what we need to be doing right now as an industry, is playing with this idea of smart, emotionally advanced AI. Okay, last couple of slides, and I'll take some questions. We're living in a time, like I said, where technology is progressing at the speed of light. We've got designers who have the best intentions at heart, and engineers who are sitting in whatever company they're sitting in, and they're trying to get the job done. But are we really thinking about the implications of what we're building? And are we really thinking about what it means to our humanity? And wouldn't it be a shame to wake up 5 or 10 years from now and say, why did we do that? That was kind of dumb. That was kind of a done design decision that somebody made. And I'll tell you right now, it's happening because I was in a pitch by an amazing company, scary company, that essentially what they're able to do is take the computing power of Google and Facebook and analyze big data in a cloud distributed way. And the use case that the CTO showed us was there was a guy driving an Uber committing crimes, and they took the data and they were able to predict, literally predict, where the next crimes were going to happen. And he shared this as a case. He's like, isn't this amazing? And I was like, yeah, it's amazing. Like, do you have an ethics board? Are you thinking about the power that you're generating? And he's like, we generally try and do the right thing. And you hear that all the time, do no evil, and you hear that. And it's true, people basically want to do the right thing. But with the right incentives, with the wrong incentives, I think, we inadvertently create things we don't want. So I think I belabor the point. I think hopefully this sets the tone a bit for the rest of the day to help us think about the implications of what we're doing. Obviously, we're all communicators, and we're in the advertising and marketing industry. We have tremendous power and I think tremendous responsibility. So that's it. Thank you for the time. If there are any questions, I'll take a few now, but that's it. Thank you. Is there a mic?
Thanks for accepting the challenge.
Yeah, you get the Girl Scouts award, right? Yeah.
So you talked about how AI can understand our emotion, but do you think it'll ever reach a point where it has emotion of its own and has its own motives and can potentially manipulate our emotions?
I do, yeah. I really do. I mean, I think we don't even have to even get into the minefield of sentience. Will it be self-aware? I think that in essence, if it's behaving as if it has its own emotions and it has its own agenda, and it knows how to leverage our emotions to its own advantage or disadvantage or whatever, then yeah, it's as good as it's having its own emotions. And actually Honda is developing a prototype of where the car itself has its own emotions, and it basically, you can tell the diagnostic health of the car based upon its emotions. So it's a kind of an interesting way to UI basically to interface. But I do think machines will have emotions. I think ultimately this idea of sentience is one that people way smarter than me are playing with. And again, there's some great papers written on when people think superintelligence will emerge and become sentience, and people way smarter than me saying in the next 30 to 40 years. And that alone should freak us all out. But I think that emotionally intelligent machines actually will become better machines. They'll work more intuitively with people. They'll know us better. But again, at what cost? At what price? Where do we draw the line? Those are the conversations that we need to have today. Yeah.
So you mentioned. Is this on?
Test.
Oh, thank you. So you mentioned ethical responsibility a few times, and a car crashed. So,
Yeah.
do you have any visibility or insights into what's happening at the government level to manage or to set up some kind of governance for those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think there's some private initiatives like OpenAI, that Musk is big on. I know the UN has an initiative on AI, ethics in AI as well, which is good. I'm not sure if our, the federal government has created any initiatives around AI and ethics. I'm not aware of anything, but obviously it feels like it needs to be done. But I think the UN has an initiative which is super interesting, and obviously this OpenAI Foundation, and if you dig into that, it's a whole really interesting thing. I'm out of time. All right, so I'll be around if there are any more questions. But yeah, I really enjoyed the time with you guys. Thank you.
Oh, that was good. And good job asking questions. I feel like now, you see, that's how it works when one person asks a question, then 5 hands goes up after that. I mean, this whole idea of machines reading emotions and what that means, and I didn't even get to ask about Cylons and Battlestar Galactica and what happens when the robots take over. It's just super fascinating and scary at the same time. That's why we watch Black Mirror, to freak ourselves out about what technology is doing to our behavior. So that was fantastic. Thank you, Ari, for that.